You lock your front door twice before bed. You check it a third time just to be sure. Nothing is actually wrong. No one is outside. But your chest is tight and your ears are straining for a sound that never comes. You tell yourself this is anxiety. But the real answer is far stranger. Your ancestors were not afraid of dying. Not really. They were afraid of something worse. Being alone. For most of human history, a person by themselves was not a free person. They were a dead person walking. No spear thrower survives a lion alone. No forager survives a drought alone. No mother raises a child alone. Survival was never an individual sport. It was a group project with no opt-out clause. So your brain did something clever. It stopped treating loneliness as an inconvenience. It started treating it as a 5-alarm emergency, on par with starvation or blood loss. Think about that for a second. Isolation and injury filed under the exact same warning system. Why? Because for 100,000 years, the two were basically the same thing. Get separated from the group and you were already injured. You just hadn't felt the wound yet. This is not a metaphor. Researchers have measured it directly. Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA ran an experiment now famous in psychology circles. She had participants play a simple ball-tossing game while inside a brain scanner, believing they were playing with 2 other real people online. Partway through, the other players stopped throwing the ball to them. They were excluded, frozen out, left standing there, digitally, doing nothing. The brain scans showed something nobody expected. The exact same region that lights up during physical pain, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, activated during social rejection. Not something similar to pain. Not a pain-like signal. The same circuitry your brain uses when you burn your hand on a stove. Being excluded doesn't just feel like an injury. As far as your ancient alarm system is concerned, it is one. Now here's the part that should really unsettle you. That system was built for a world that no longer exists. You do not live in a 40-person band anymore. You live in a city of millions, surrounded by more human faces in a single subway ride than your ancestors saw across their entire lifetime. And yet you can feel more alone than they ever did. How is that possible? Because your brain doesn't count faces, it counts bonds. And bonds are expensive to build. Robin Dunbar, the anthropologist who spent decades studying primate social groups, found something remarkable when he compared brain size to group size across different species. The bigger an animal's social circle, the bigger the brain region dedicated to tracking relationships. He extrapolated the pattern to humans and landed on a now famous number: 150. That's roughly the maximum number of stable, meaningful relationships a human brain can actually track and maintain. 150, not 5,000 followers. Not a group chat with 40 people you haven't spoken to in a year. 150 real, reciprocal, remembered connections. Your ancestors lived inside that number their entire lives. Their tribe was the edge of their social universe. Every face they knew, they trusted, at least a little. Every face they trusted they could call on. You, on the other hand, might scroll past 1,000 faces before breakfast and feel less connected than a hunter-gatherer who never left a valley. That's not weakness. That's math. Your social software is running on hardware built for a much smaller village. So what happens when the alarm goes off and nobody comes? This is where it gets darker and stranger. In the 1950s, a psychologist named Harlow ran a series of experiments on infant rhesus monkeys that would never be approved today, but that permanently changed how scientists understood attachment. He separated baby monkeys from their mothers and gave them 2 artificial substitutes. One was made of bare wire but dispensed milk. The other was covered in soft cloth but offered no food at all. If survival were only about resources, the babies should have clung to the wire mother. She had the food. She was, biologically speaking, the one keeping them alive. They didn't. The infant monkeys spent nearly all their time clinging to the cloth mother. They only visited the wire one to feed, then rushed straight back to the soft one for comfort. When Harlow introduced something frightening into the cage, the babies ran to the cloth mother every single time, not the one with milk. Contact and comfort weren't a bonus feature layered on top of survival. They were survival. A body that never went hungry could still be destroyed by isolation. You carry that same wiring today. It's why a hug can calm you faster than logic. It's why a text that says "you up" at midnight can feel like a small rescue. It's why solitary confinement is classified by many psychologists as a form of psychological torture, even when the prisoner is fed, warm, and physically unharmed. The body can be fine. The alarm still screams. Here's the twist your brain never saw coming. The ancient alarm was built to solve a problem that had a solution: Feel the pain of exclusion, seek out your tribe, resolve the danger, alarm switches off. Clean loop, efficient. But the modern world broke the loop. Now you can trigger the alarm 100 times a day without ever finding real resolution. A notification with no reply. A message left on read. A feed full of parties you weren't invited to, weddings you weren't asked to attend, group photos with a gap exactly where you should have been standing. Each one fires the same ancient circuit that once meant you are about to die out here. Your ancestors' alarm rang rarely, and when it did, action fixed it. Your alarm rings constantly, and most of the time, there is no group to run back to. Just a screen that keeps refreshing. This is why chronic loneliness has been linked in study after study to inflammation, poor sleep, and even earlier mortality. Researcher John Cacioppo, who spent much of his career studying loneliness at a biological level, found that people who felt chronically isolated showed measurable changes in immune function and stress hormones, comparable in some ways to the physiological toll of smoking. Not because being alone is inherently deadly, because your body still believes, deep in its oldest programming, that being alone means being unprotected. So the tightness in your chest when a friend goes quiet for too long, that's not overreaction. That's 100,000 years of ancestors who did not survive the silence, whispering through your nervous system. The racing thought when you're the last one to hear about the plans? That's not paranoia. That's an alarm built during an era when being the last to know really did mean being left behind. None of this means you're broken. It means you're running very old software in a very new world, and the software hasn't gotten the update. So tonight, when you check the lock a third time, or refresh a message thread that isn't going to reply, remember what you're actually feeling. It isn't really about the door. It isn't really about the message. It's an alarm built for a savannah, going off in a bedroom. You lock your front door twice before bed. You check it a third time just to be sure. And for the first time, you understand exactly why.